Director Capps, are you there? Director Capps, are you there?
We were muted. Yes, hello.
All right, Director Capps or Chair Capps, we are ready when you are.
Okay, good. Let's get moving then. It's my pleasure to call us to order. I will call to order the October 19th, 2023 meeting of the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District Board of Directors. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Director Williams?
He's here.
He's here.
Thank you. Thank you. Director Hartman?
Here.
Director Clark? Director Richards?
Here.
Director Rouse?
Here.
Director Nelson?
Here.
Director Lavanino? Director King?
Here.
Director Julian? Director Osborne?
Here.
Director Patino? Director Infante?
Here.
And Chair Capps.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, excellent. Thanks, everyone. At this time, let's please stand and join the board in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we need to have approval of the minutes. Is there any discussion on the minutes of the August 17th, 2023 meeting?
Hartman moves approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please take a roll call vote?
I'm sorry, Chair Capps. Who was the second?
Rouse.
Rouse.
Thank you. Director Williams?
Aye.
Director Hartman? Director Hartman?
Aye.
Oh, thank you. Director Richards?
Yes.
Director Rouse?
Aye.
Director Nelson?
Aye.
Director Lavanino?
Aye.
Director King?
Aye.
Director Osborne?
Aye.
Director Infante?
Aye.
And Chair Patino? I'm sorry, Chair Capps.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So the next item is the approval of the administrative items. Does any board member wish to pull any of these items? See any in Santa Barbara, any up in Santa Maria?
Yeah, if I could just highlight for a moment the D2.
Director Nelson?
Yes.
Will this need a separate vote?
No, it won't need a separate vote. Just a quick comment on it.
Sure. Go ahead, Director Nelson.
Do you need to read that?
Yeah. Administrative item D2, District Grant and Incentive Program Activities. Receive and file the following grant program related activities. An update on the old car buyback program for vehicles retired during the period of July 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2023. And 2, an update on the Landscape Equipment Electrification Fund Program Year 3 for zero emission landscape equipment vouchers during the period of June 5th, 2023 through September 30th, 2023.
I just pulled this item just to highlight the LEAF program and some of the good work that's being done there. Our office has been working with a local vendor, Oak Knolls Hardware, and I believe it was on October 10th. We actually had a demo day out at the Orchid Babe Ruth Fields. That's county property near Waller Park, where we had quite a few vendors out there. I want to thank Air Pollution Control District staff for continuing to support the work that they're doing. I think most of it's been driven out of that one vendor and continues to be a great source of bringing these dollars back into our community and making sure that we have an opportunity for some of our local landscape companies to access the technology out there and it to be demonstrated. Just wanted to highlight that. And if you, there will be another semi-demo day on November 11th at Oak Knolls Hardware. There actually it's also going to be a Veterans Services Day where we're actually going to be doing some barbecues for veterans and have a bunch of product out there at Clark and Bradley and Orchid that will further highlight the LEAF program. So I just want to put that out there on the radar for everybody.
Thank you. I appreciate you mentioning that. I was actually going to talk a little bit about it during my director's report, but just to add on to that, the program is currently situated to close on the 3rd of November, and we have funds still available, so I urge all of you to work with your agencies, any local businesses to get the word out. We've been doing great. These events have been a great opportunity to get the manufacturers in town and talking to some really high-quality potential users. So it's very important for us to get the word out, especially with the January 1st date of CARB, where they will be no longer allowing the sale of new gasoline or diesel-powered equipment. So it's going to be electric on the shelves. So get your incentives while you can.
Thank you. I believe Director Hartman has a comment on this.
Oh, well, congratulations, Director Nelson, terrific. And Aaron, who should we be reaching out to in our districts? How do we, other than newsletters, how do we collar people to encourage them to participate?
We've been doing a lot of outreach to landscape businesses in the area, to city and municipal agencies that operate their own landscape equipment, to golf courses. These are the businesses that use the equipment that are currently eligible. So any contacts you might have working with your own staff to get the word out so they provide applications within the November 3rd date would be ideal.
Golf courses. Thank you.
Excellent. Clerk, I believe I asked for public comment on this item or for the entire admin agenda.
Chair Capps, we did not receive any public comment on the administrative agenda.
Okay, well then I think we're ready for a roll call vote on the entire administrative agenda.
Chair Capps, I don't believe we have a motion or a second.
Move
I'm sorry.
approval, King.
That's what I meant to say. Thank you.
I have a first from Director King. And who was the second?
A second from Williams.
Thank you. All right. Director Williams?
Yes.
Director Hartman?
Yes.
Director Richards?
Yes.
Director Rouse?
Aye.
Director Nelson?
Aye.
Director Lavanino?
Aye.
Director King?
Aye.
Director Osborne?
Aye.
Director Infante?
Aye.
And Chair Capps.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Now we are ready for item E, Director's Report. Ms. Arlen Gannett, will you please give your report to the board?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I will have a short update today, just 2 items now that we already covered one. The first one, I wanted to give an update on the Central Coast Agricultural Manufacturing Facilities. The Air District submitted a petition to the hearing board in an effort to get these facilities in compliance with our permit requirements. This action was effective at getting CCA to the table, and on October 3rd, just one day before the hearing board, we actually had a complete permit application from this facility. With that, we were able to support the continuance of this item before the hearing board. It was granted, the continuance was granted until December 6th. That was a unanimous decision by the hearing board. Since then, we've been working with CCA, working closely with them on our permit, and it's the district's goal to issue a draft permit within a few weeks for their review and consideration, and finalize the permit in advance of the December 6th hearing board meeting. The permit will include conditions that identify emission reduction strategies and specified dates when CCA must install the emission control equipment, and with ongoing compliance. I mean, once this permit is complete, they can begin moving forward, and with ongoing compliance, we will verify with routine inspections, tracking, and report review that everything is being adhered to. So overall, we are very hopeful that things will continue moving in the right direction. The second item is related to our Community Advisory Council. We have a meeting set for November 1st in Buellton, and this is our last BARCT measure, Best Available Retrofit Control Technology measure. That's an easy one, isn't it, Tim? This is our last one as described by AB 617, which you'll hear about shortly. It relates to turbines at ExxonMobil facility in Las Flores Canyon. We will provide the measure as it's going forward, and As defined by 617, all BARCed measures must be brought to the board by the end of this calendar year. So our goal is to have it before the CAC on November 1 and then to your board at the December hearing. We will also take this CAC meeting and provide an opportunity for an overview on Rule 210. That's our district fee rule. And with that, my director's report is concluded.
Thank you. Do we have any, before I go to any questions, do we have any public comment on the director's report?
Chair Capps, we did not receive any public comment on the director's report.
I see Director Hartman has her hand up. Question, comment?
Yes. Erin, could you elaborate a little bit more on CCA and what solvents or what was the air pollution risk? I have some constituents who came to my office hours in Lompoc and feel that they were suffering from the air quality impacts, and so I promised that I would ask you about that.
Solvent use is the primary area that permits are required, and we're working through all of the details as far as what emission control technology can be in place. It's taken us a long time to get here, and that's why we decided to go down the petition for an abatement order. As far as the exact exposure to the surrounding community, I do not have that information now, and they also have been changing their operations over the 3 years that we've been working with them. So I know that they've progressively been using more solvents, and that was part of the reason why we decided it was now time to take the next step and get them into compliance. Director Hartman, I can get more information and follow up with you specifically on the amount of emissions that were experienced by the local community, if that would be a benefit for you.
That would be helpful, and the expected health impacts from those emissions.
We will follow up with you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see Director Nelson, I believe. Yes.
Yes, got to raise my hand. Thank you, Chair Capps. Just further on the CCA conversation, it's good to hear that they're coming into compliance and there's a working relationship starting to develop finally on that. My understanding there's been a lot of violations up until this point and fines, and I know that at one point I think referred this to the district attorney's office. Is that correct? You're
referring to another facility. That was the backup generators that were being used outside of Buellton.
Gotcha.
And that case has been forwarded over to the DA.
Were there any issues with this facility in Lompoc?
There's a number of violations actually over the entire tenure that we've been trying to get them in permit. Every day is a separate violation. And those violations cannot be settled until compliance is reached.
Okay, at that point, those violations and those fines, help me out. Where do we go once we do come into compliance?
Once they reach compliance, then the NOVs will be moved to our mutual settlement program, and we'll be negotiating the fine penalty for all of those violations at that point. Depending on the size of settlement, as we have said before with the violations outside of Buellton, it's the district's goal to put those funds back into the community to help offset the air quality impacts that were experienced.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I think we're set with thank you for that director's report. Now item F, public comment. Any members of the public who wish to speak that items are not on the agenda? Madam Clerk?
Chair Capps, we did not receive any public comment on items not on the agenda, and we have no attendees on Zoom.
Thank you. The next item is G1. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Certainly. Discussion item G1. Determine that a new district rule for miscellaneous combustion units is no longer necessary to satisfy Assembly Bill 617 requirements. Consider recommendations as follows. 1. Receive and file a report regarding best available retrofit control technology, BARCed, for miscellaneous combustion units at Assembly Bill 617 Industrial Facility. And 2. Adopt a resolution determining that adopting a new district rule is no longer necessary to implement BARCed for miscellaneous combustion units because the affected Assembly Bill 617 industrial facility has requested changes to their district permit to operate to comply with the BART analysis through enforceable permit conditions.
Today we'll have a presentation from Tim Mitro. He's an air quality engineer in the planning division. And as I mentioned during my director's report, we are on the final stretch, the end of the race on the BART measures. So we have this presentation that Tim will be providing and that will be followed up at our next meeting with the last of the BART measures.
All right, thank you, Aaron. We all good on Zoom, Lori? Okay. So yes, today's presentation will be on the Assembly Bill 617 Best Available Retrofit Control Technology for Miscellaneous Combustion Units. And so the mandate for this assessment came from AB 617, which was enacted to provide for community air protection. One of the critical components of AB 617 is to require BART at the largest industrial facilities within California, which are the facilities that are subject to the California Cap and Trade regulation. There are 6 of these facilities within Santa Barbara County, and these facilities previously emitted more than 25,000 metric tons of greenhouse gases in a single year. So AB 617 requires us to evaluate these facilities for BART, requiring the maximum emission reduction achievable after taking into account environmental and economic impacts. So as Aaron mentioned, we are in the home stretch. This board adopted our rule development schedule back in 2018, and it had 6 different equipment categories that needed to be evaluated for BART. We've already completed the assessments for the true boiler rules, particulate matter control devices, and reciprocating internal combustion engines. And today's presentation is focused on the miscellaneous combustion units. So what exactly is a miscellaneous combustion unit? These are like a wide variety of unique external combustion equipment, such as dryers, dehydrators, ovens, kilns, and so on and so forth. Collectively, these units all either combust fuel to directly heat a product, or they heat air that is then directed to the product material. Currently, the district does not have a prohibitory rule that focuses on these miscellaneous units. We have rules that cover boilers, water heaters, steam generators, and process heaters, but these miscellaneous units are more unique, and the combustion parameters often need to be tailored to the specific process. This analysis will mainly affect Imerys's diatomaceous earth processing plant in Lompoc, since they have 2 large devices, the Silicates conveyor dryer and the Silicates flash dryer. These 2 devices predate a lot of the air district permit requirements, since they were installed before 1990, and so they have uncontrolled conventional burner systems. This BART analysis evaluates whether it is going to be whether new control technologies can be employed to reduce emissions from these units, since these burners are over 30 years old. So district staff reviewed the rules that have already been adopted by other California air districts, such as the South Coast Air Quality Management District and the Ventura County Air Pollution Control District. And we determined that it is feasible to adopt a BART emission standard for dryers, furnaces, kilns, and heaters that are rated at 5 million BTU or higher. The lower NOx standards, as shown in Table 4.1, are achievable if the dryers are retrofitted with low NOx burners. The dryers at Imerys would specifically be held to the 30 part per million NOx standard, because the temperature set point for those 2 devices is around 700 degrees Fahrenheit. To assess whether it is cost-effective to retrofit the conveyor dryer and the flash dryer, district staff compiled the estimated costs for the low NOx burners, as well as the expected emission reductions from the project. The costs shown on this slide represent the cost for new low NOx burners that are certified by the manufacturer to meet the 30 ppm NOx standard. And based on the facility's operational usage over the last 3 years, we expect around a half a ton of NOx emission reductions per year, with a cost effectiveness ranging from $71,000 to a little over $300,000 per ton of NOx reduced. And so these values are higher than normal, and that's mainly because Imerys isn't using their burners near their maximum capacity. They're currently only using them at about 1 to 4% of their maximum load. So at this point, it would not be cost effective to retrofit the dryers with low NOx burners based on their recent actual operating loads. However, the operating permit for the facility allows these devices to operate at maximum capacity 24 hours per day, 365 days per year. So if these units do operate for more hours or at a higher load in future years, it would be cost effective to meet the BARC emission standards at that point in time. So that's where the low use threshold comes into play. We have reviewed the low use thresholds within our own prohibitory rules, as well as the thresholds adopted by other air districts, and staff proposes the 90,000 therm limit per burner. So that means the conveyor dryer can operate up to 270,000 therms per year, and the flash dryer can be up to 90,000 therms per year using their existing equipment. So including this low use threshold in the BARC assessment makes the project more cost effective. The district has met with Imerys on a few occasions to discuss the analysis, and Imerys chose to submit an application to incorporate these low use thresholds directly into their operating permit. The permit, which is included as attachment B to the board package, was issued on October 5th, and it is an enforceable document that clearly spells out if at any time in the future the low use threshold is exceeded, a new permit application will be required within 30 days. And since it does take some time to design, install, and test the new equipment, Imerys will have up to 18 months at that point to demonstrate compliance with the BARC standards. But at this point in time, no equipment changes are needed, and Imerys can continue using their existing equipment. This BARC analysis will also apply to any new installation of miscellaneous combustion units at any of the 6 facilities within the county, requiring them to install low NOx burners on new projects. However, most of these new installations would be evaluated for BACT, or best available retrofit, or best available control technology, which is equal to or more stringent than BARC. So this analysis is not anticipated to add any new costs or requirements for the remaining AB 617 industrial facilities. So with Imerys accepting enforceable permit conditions to implement BARC, staff affirms that it is no longer necessary to adopt a new rule. The staff recommendation is for the board to adopt the attached resolution, and this resolution concludes that a new district rule for miscellaneous combustion units is no longer necessary to satisfy the AB 617 BARC requirements. And to wrap things up, I just wanted to present some of the major milestones for this project. We touched on some of these topics already, but I just wanted to point out that we had a Community Advisory Council meeting on August 23rd, where the CAC members and the public had an opportunity to comment on the analysis and ask any questions. And another bullet point is, if the board approves staff's recommendation, the BARC analysis would be forwarded to the California Air Resources Board and posted on their website to make it readily available to the other air districts and communities within California. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Tim. Any directors have any discussion or questions? Director Nelson?
Yes, thank you, Chair Capps. Something caught my eye in this presentation. So this would also apply to crematories, potentially, and that was under the miscellaneous. And I believe we have 3 or 4 crematories in our county. I just wanted to understand, it seems like this, the Imerys facility got triggered here, but what can you Give me some assurances with crematories.
So this analysis only affects the 6 AB 617 industrial facilities, which are the facilities subject to the California Cap and Trade regulation. These facilities have a lot of fuel combustion, and so that's why they're over the 25,000 metric tons per year of greenhouse gases, whereas crematories are generally smaller combustion units, and they're also usually using burners that are in the like 2 to 3 million BTU per hour range. And this analysis only applies to the larger miscellaneous combustion units that are 5 million BTU per hour or greater. So this analysis will not affect any crematories.
And one other aspect of 617, when it was approved, it was like a space and time, and only those facilities at that point in time were actually captured by the BARC requirement. So no new facilities will be added in.
Okay. And then those facilities that were under those thresholds, and none of those were identified in our county as
Right.
part of this.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Seeing none in Santa Maria.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any public comments?
Chair Capps, we did not receive any public comments on this item.
Okay, may I please have a motion and a second?
Move staff recommendation.
Thank you, Director
Second,
Rouse.
King.
Second, King. May the clerk please take a roll call vote?
Director Williams? Director Hartman?
Aye.
Director Richards?
Yes.
Director Rouse?
Aye.
Director Nelson?
Aye.
Director Lavanino?
Aye.
Director King?
Aye.
Director Osborne?
Aye.
Director Infante?
Aye.
And Chair Capps.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, item D2. Thank you so much, everyone. D2, the 2022 Annual Air Quality Report. Madam Clerk, please read it, item into the record.
Discussion item G2, 2022 Annual Air Quality Report. Receive and file a presentation and 2022 Annual Air Quality Report for Santa Barbara County.
All right, today we're going to have a presentation from Dave Brogy. He's an air quality specialist within our planning division. Dave usually spends most of his time out in the field. He cares and takes care of our monitoring station with our other monitoring staff that are out there. So this is his first presentation to the board, and I'm sure he's thrilled to be here.
I am thrilled that I have good news for you. Good afternoon, Chair Capps and members of the board. My name is David Brogy. I am an air quality specialist with the district and operate the Santa Maria and Lompoc monitoring stations. Today I'm here to present the annual air quality report for 2022. In 2022, we had a robust network of 12 monitoring stations across the county, which collectively measure the pollutants listed on the left. Each station serves its own purpose and measures pollutants based on that purpose. Several stations function to provide air quality data in densely populated areas, while others exist as part of an industrial permit requirement. For example, there is a station in Carpinteria off Highway 150, which measures meteorological data, ozone, and nitrogen oxides. There are 2 stations in Goleta and Santa Barbara, which measure meteorological data, ozone, PM10, and PM2.5. Along the 154, we have another 2 ozone stations, one at San Ynez and one off Paradise Road, which is historically our highest ozone site in the county. The Gaviota Coast is home to our Las Flores Canyon station, and up the 101 from there is our Lompoc 8th Street site. Both these stations are loaded with ozone and PM monitors, as well as NOx, CO, and analyzers for permit requirements. At the top of the county is our new Santa Maria station on Orchid Road, which came online October 1st, 2022. The new site has PM, ozone, and meteorological monitors. Here is a table displaying which parameters are measured at each station. Going across the top, the parameters we measure are ozone, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, total hydrocarbons, hydrogen sulfide, total reduced sulfur, particulate matter under 10 microns in diameter, particulate matter under 2.5 microns in diameter, wind speed, wind direction, and atmospheric temperature. You may notice some parameters are marked as SLAMS monitors, while others are marked as non-NACS monitors. SLAM stands for State and Local Air Monitoring Stations, and data from those monitors are compared against the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, or NACS. The non-NACS monitors exist to satisfy industrial permit requirements, and data from them are not used to determine attainment of air quality standards. Santa Maria denotes it only sampled for the fourth quarter of 2022. After being shut down in 2021, district staff worked through 2021 and 2022 to secure a new location in Santa Maria on Orchid Road and installed an air monitoring station, which is now providing real-time hourly averages of ozone, PM10, PM2.5, and meteorological data to community on our website. Speaking of the Santa Maria station, here are 3 current images after its completion. The first is the exterior of the shelter, which includes a chain link fence, a locking gate around a shipping container with a roof platform and a ladder. The second and third images show particulate matter and ozone instruments inside the station. The station has recently been equipped with community air monitors to measure potential impacts from the Santa Maria asphalt refinery. The new monitors include hydrogen sulfide, sulfur dioxide, and BTEX pollutants, also in this third picture. Not every monitoring station looks exactly like this, but they are functionally all the same. They have a structure to protect the equipment from the elements, air conditioning to keep the shelter temperature stable, sample intakes which penetrate the roof of the structure to sample ambient air and particulates, communications equipment to allow remote data acquisition and equipment control, and meteorological tower measuring wind speed, wind direction, and outside temperature. The data collected from these stations are audited by both CARB and the EPA regularly, and all data is certified and compiled annually and submitted to the EPA. Here is a chart displaying the number of exceedances of the 3 24-hour particulate matter standards for Santa Barbara County. The red bar represents the number of days the state 24-hour PM10 standard of 50 micrograms was exceeded. The blue bar represents the federal 24-hour PM standard of 150 micrograms, and the yellow bar represents the federal 24-hour PM 2.5 standard of 35 micrograms. In 2022, there were 7 days where the state 24-hour PM 10 standard of 50 micrograms were exceeded. 3 of the exceedances were caused by high winds, 3 of the exceedances were caused by nearby construction activities, and 1 caused by smoke impacts from fires both north and south of us. There were no days in 2022 exceeding any other PM standards. If the Santa Maria station were sampling for all of 2022, it is possible we would have had more PM exceedances. There are 3 ambient air quality standards for ozone. They are state and federal 8-hour ozone standards set at 70 parts per billion, and there is also a state 1-hour standard set at 95 parts per billion. During 2022, we had 0 days where we exceeded either the state or federal 8-hour standards, and as a result, CARB took action to designate Santa Barbara County as non-attainment transitional, for the state ozone standards based on the 3-year data set from 2019 to 2021. The next graph shows the number of days each year which fell into each air quality index category. Air quality index, or AQI, is a user-friendly gauge classifying the health effects of multiple pollutants on the same numerical scale. The AQI for the county is based on the highest measuring pollutant each day, which is typically ozone or PM. The bar graph shows the number of days which fell into each AQI category based on the federal AQI scale. An index value between 0 to 50 is colored green, meaning good air quality. 51 to 100 is yellow for moderate air quality. Above 100, there are different colors for unhealthy air, starting with orange, red, purple, and maroon. In 2022, there were 286 good days of good air, about 80%. There were 79 moderate days, 0 days considered unhealthy for sensitive groups, unhealthy, or hazardous. The next two slides. Next two slides are tools that I would like to highlight. If you're ever wondering what current air quality conditions are, in addition to our website, the Fire and Smoke Map is a great tool for staying aware of the air quality no matter where you are. It integrates real-time data and air monitoring stations, low-cost sensors, and temporary monitors such as EBAMs, which may be deployed for prescribed or wildfires into one map. It covers the entire United States and includes data from several other sources around the globe. There are also helpful features such as smoke plume detection and forecasting, which can be seen on the image on the right. That's taken during a fire up in Oregon, and then the one on the left is all green like it normally is in Santa Barbara County. If you're interested in what we expect the air quality will be in Santa Barbara County, we provide ozone and particulate matter forecasts for up to 2 days in the future on our website. This was taken from about 9 days ago when we had a wind episode. So we can see the PM10 was yellow and moderate. And again, this is, you can see forecasts for up to 2 days in the future on our website in Santa Barbara County, just below the current conditions section on the website. To wrap it all up, I'd like to say that 2022 was a really clean year in terms of air quality. We had only 7 exceedance days for all pollutants, all of which were state PM10 exceedances. And we did not exceed any of the standards for nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, or carbon monoxide. And that concludes my presentation. I can take any questions you may have.
That's good news. Any discussion or questions from the board?
Sure.
Yes. Yeah, we'll start down here. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I had a question with regard to the different monitoring that occurs at the different stations. And I know that the city of Goleta has in the past dealt with some issues of hydrogen sulfide. I know from the Elwood onshore facility, as well as some agricultural well drilling in the area. We've had some concerns in the past. So can you explain how that's determined, what station gets monitored for which of these items?
It's usually monitored because of permit requirements if you're talking about H2S. So there's a monitor, monitoring capabilities at Las Flores Canyon when it's in operation. And there was H2S monitoring at West Campus, but that is, I believe, shut down recently. There is not H2S monitoring at the Goleta station. We do have what's called an air pointer, and it has H2S. We can measure H2S, and it's mobile source as long as there's power to plug it in. So we've put that in schools, at a school in Goleta, and I believe we positioned it in Summerland. We've also had it in Santa Maria for H2S smells.
Yeah, the H2S that we've been monitoring or requiring of the platform Holly to monitor was at the West Campus station. And once the permit is closed, we no longer need a permit there. The condition for the West Campus monitoring of H2S will also be removed. As it relates to compliance issue, our air pointer is our most critical tool that we're able to mobilize throughout the county wherever we may be experiencing nuisance impacts from H2S, and Goleta has tended to be an area where the air pointer has served us very well to get it out in place and make sure it's in place before the significant impacts occur. But we do not have an H2S monitor at our SLAM stations anywhere in the county.
Correct.
Okay, and then I would assume that there'd be a cost involved with that, and that's why we wouldn't have that, or is that something that could be requested? I mean, since we've had problems in the past.
Our SLAM stations are geared towards the ambient air quality standards and making sure that we reach and achieve and maintain the national ambient air quality standards. And as H2S impacts that we've observed, they've been very site-specific or source-specific, so they aren't serving the same purpose as our community air monitoring stations that Dave just presented on. It is expensive to add more monitoring capacity in, and that's why when we have sources that we know will likely or have the potential of resulting in H2S, we've incorporated those as permit conditions.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes.
Well, just, my thought is that we approach that issue the same way that, I brought up, the fact that a lot of our stations aren't that close to freeways, right? And that's where you would get the worst reading. And so I would say the H2S issue and that issue, one of the long-term things that we should wrestle with is just if there's ever opportunities for movie stations closer to locations where the readings might be worse than we should. Usually every year this report is kind of like an exercise in how awesome it is to live in the age that we live instead of 30 years ago in terms of air quality. But we still might have pockets where the air quality is poor, and it would be great to, in the long run, figure out ways to get a better readings of that, and one might be to always look for any opportunities there would be to move stations. Is that something that staff has ever thought about doing?
I think we were hopeful that the air pointer that we purchased for $100,000 would serve in that capacity where we can relocate it, where we were concerned that the concentrations might not be recognized with our network. We're always trying to figure out the most efficient way of managing our air monitoring network. It is quite extensive when you compare the amount of monitors that we have throughout this county and the population we serve compared to elsewhere in the state. And so it's a matter of balancing the resources we have, the stations that we have, and how we can better serve those throughout the entire county. The air pointer, like I mentioned, it can be moved anywhere that we have power. That's one of the challenges. It has to have power. And if we had a solar backup or battery backup, that's something that we could consider. But right now, it's very dependent on power access.
Chair Capps, we have two comments here in Santa Maria. Director Infante and Director Lavanino.
Who first?
Okay.
Director Infante.
You got.
Thank you. Quick question or two. I like this fire and smoke. Thank you for the presentation, by the way.
Yep.
I like this fire and smoke map. I got it pulled up here, and it looks like Santa Maria is green, but the whole Santa Ynez Valley is yellow. Why?
There's controlled burns taking
That's the
place
controlled
today.
burn?
Yeah.
The
That was yesterday, I thought.
PM was elevated, though. It started around midnight today, and it's still continuing on right now as we speak. I believe it's yellow, so.
There is a red spot on here that's PM 2.5?
Director Infante, is your mic on?
Yes. It's not in front of me, I'm
I
sorry.
believe that's up by where the fire is taking place. There's even a maroon, dark maroon one next to the fire, and those are purple airs. They're portable little monitors,
So you can pull them out and take.
but they do work for fire smoke.
Excellent. One other question. Why is Paradise Road so bad?
Paradise Road is like the top of the valley of Santa Ynez. So my theory on it is the vehicle traffic, where anything that makes NOx is it travels through our valley up the Santa Ynez Valley, gets trapped up in Paradise Road, and it's full of oak trees, and the oak trees are off-gassing oxygen, and they're attaching to the NOx, and it makes ozone. So that's O3.
Out in the middle of no place.
So that's I think that's why it averages about 5 to 10% higher than Santa Ynez, and I think it's because of all the trees, and it gathers there.
Thank you very much.
Steve.
Chair Capps, thanks. Yeah, I think Director Williams was afraid I was going to talk about what a great report this is and how clean the air is here. So I have to do it now. So, but I think it's I always think it's a good thing. This report always brings things into perspective. But so when we talk about whichever size PM we're talking about as opposed to ozone, would you characterize one as more naturally affecting and one that's more man-made, or how would you compare those two?
PM is just dust, being usually wind.
Fire, wind.
PM10.
Or PM10 is usually dust, and fire smoke is usually PM 2.5, unless the fire is burning real close. We can experience both.
In 2.5, you also get an impact from diesel exhaust. That's one of the most significant impacts that generates PM 2.5. So it's a smaller size. It gets lodged deeper into our lungs and actually can bypass into our blood system.
But we can't regulate that.
We can't regulate.
I mean, we don't regulate when a fire happens or when it's a windy day or whatever. I mean,
Oh.
You're really kind of at the whim of Mother Nature at some point.
Right. I guess where we are working on our prescribed fires, we're trying to reduce the smoke impact so we don't have catastrophic wildfires. So that's one of our roles that we play on wildfires. We also try to get the word out. So when we are impacted, folks are aware of their local air quality conditions and they can take steps to protect their health. And on the diesel side, we're trying to get the dollars out there to entice folks to get rid of the dirty diesel, getting cleaner technology in place.
And then ozone would be definitely man-made creations. And that's where we have 0, 0, 0.
We had a great year in 2022.
So you guys are doing a great job.
We are.
That's what I'm trying to say. And then as far as the where we measure, it would seem to me like I'm curious what goes all into that, because putting something right next to a factory also doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me if people aren't living there. So how I mean, obviously they're regulated and we test that anyway, but what's the entire pie that goes into citing a testing spot?
EPA has rigorous guidelines for siting of air monitoring stations that we follow. And I don't have all of those guidelines memorized. Dave, you might be able to help out.
Right. An example is our old Santa Maria station was right on Broadway, across the street from Santa Maria High School. It was only about 40 feet from the highway, so the PM would pick up when the traffic picked up, and the cars would lay out a bunch of NOx on the road, and then the sun would come out and turn it into ozone. It would still blow away because it's in Santa Maria, but but that was a bad sighting spot. So to pick locations, like I say, there's a large sighting criteria to put it there. It can't be next to certain things, up against buildings. It can't be next to roads. If you mentioned putting them, we'd heard about putting along the freeway. Well, that's a terrible spot, along the freeway. Actually, the more traffic you put on the freeway, the farther away you need to be from the freeway. So, so there's, like I say, it's mostly not be next to something, not be next to roads.
And we have what's our long-range plan? It's our air quality network plan that the EPA requires us to do on a regular interval. And I believe it's every 5 years we have to update our network plan. And we look at where they're currently located, we look at the requirements, and to ensure that we're meeting those. And that's the time when we can reassess the location and see if there's different spots that would better serve the community that we're serving.
Yeah. And the reason why I always highlight this to me is it's kind of the same way I feel about taxes, is nobody likes paying them, but when you see, as long as it's spent wisely, you feel okay about it. The way I feel about the regulated community or the population in general is nobody really likes restrictions and the regulations that we put on industry. But when you have something you can point to and say, look, this is the weather, this is what you used to breathe, and this is how clean it is now, I think at least for me, it makes me feel a lot better about when you do have to impose on people, that we are getting something out of it. It's not for nothing.
Yeah, Director Williams down here.
And, and I want to clarify that I agree that in terms of regulatory compliance measures, that next to freeways isn't the best, but our pushback in the past has been that we don't have the cost, we don't have the resources to have additional and expand the monitoring network. There's another purpose beyond regulatory compliance to what we do, which is to help our constituents with human health. And we just have a lot more people living close to the freeway because of our lack of affordable housing. And so it's something that is part of living here for a lot of people. We even have, in my district, schools very close to the freeway. And it just would be, in the long run, very good for us to understand, are we just less of a corridor than the areas that have been studied elsewhere in the state that indicate tremendously bad health effects from that? Or, is there a similar issue here in our county? And I don't even know, I don't think that we even have an answer to that, because we, have some purple air monitors close to freeways, but for the most part, none of our permanent monitoring isn't there.
Director Williams, I think our air pointer would be a great resource for us to assess potential impacts throughout the area, throughout the entire county, for individuals that live in close proximity to the freeway. And that's something that we can definitely bring back as far as recommendations of how we could lay out and implement a pilot project type assessment to get a better understanding of what individuals who either live or go to school in close proximity using this valuable tool.
That would be very responsive. Thank you.
Director Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Capps. It's barely touching this item, so I know as a agenda item, I got to be careful here. But talking about prescribed burns, we obviously have some prescribed burns going on right now. What is our mechanism of our agency's engagement in that? I've already had some contact, as I'm sure Director Hartman has, about some of the vineyards being concerned about some of these controlled burns that are taking place right now. Can you help me out with that, just to refresh that?
Yeah, we work very closely with the lead burner. In this case, it's County Fire. And we work with them on submitting a plan for their burn. It has to get approved by the air district, and then the meteorological conditions have to be amenable to good burning conditions. We also recently had meetings with the vintners, and we talked about the need, that's just not air district and county fire in particular, have had a number of conversations with the local vintners, and making sure that this important stakeholder is, as a group in total, is aware and engaged in the process when we do have prescribed burns. They've been working with us closely on this burn just yesterday. Unfortunately, the burn went longer than we anticipated, and it resulted in impacts to ground level conditions. And we worked closely with County Fire today, who wanted to continue the burn, but the air quality was still not in a situation that it was already unhealthy and noticeable in the valley. And by the time dispersion started to occur, so did the winds and the heat. And so it's ironic at times when air districts work with county fire, what might be good for air quality conditions aren't necessarily good for fire conditions and fire management. But it's really been a growing experience, I think, for both of our agencies to work closely with the vintners. This year was an anomaly with the weather conditions that we had. Harvest is later than normal. So it's been an important part of the conversation, and it will continue to be.
So with that specific scenario, the APCD said that this is a problem for you guys. So is the burn shut down?
There's no burning today.
No burning today.
Yeah.
Okay, where fire wanted to continue it into today, the district said no.
The air quality conditions were not acceptable in the morning hours when they wanted to burn.
So both of those agencies have to say yes to move forward. Okay, great, thank you. And by the way, Mr. Brogy, thank you for the presentation. Excellent job.
Thank you.
It's,
Okay.
looking at the monitor, it's still yellow today, even though the burn was yesterday?
Yes,
Does that mean the smoke is still
it's
apparent?
lingering around. It's getting better. If you've been watching the progression, it started,
I left the house too early this morning.
not enough coffee yet.
It turned green at San Ynez Airport on our PM 2.5 monitor a few hours ago.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move things on. Any public comment? Probably not. This one is,
Oh, Chair Katz, we did not receive any public comment on this item.
thank you for that. And this is just a receive and file, so no vote is necessary. So we're going to move on to
All right, good job,
G2, which is, I think,
G3.
oh, G3.
Yes.
The long-range fiscal strategy.
Discussion item G3, long-range fiscal strategy, fiscal years 2023-28. Receive and file a presentation on the district's long-range fiscal strategy, years 2023 through 28, and provide feedback and direction to staff.
All right, good afternoon. I'm happy to be here, and I have Tina Aguilar with me, our admin manager, and also the entire management team. This has been something that we've been working on for quite a while, and it gives me satisfaction to actually be here before you today, and I look forward to this conversation. The first slide walks through, is the PowerPoint? Oh, there it goes. Okay. Just a little bit of background. This type of analysis isn't new to our agency. 5 years ago, we did a similar analysis, and there was significant reorganization in the 2018-19 timeframe. We consolidated the number of staff. It went from 43 down to 34, and fortunate for us, that was all through natural attrition. We streamlined our leadership. We utilize our air quality specialists across division lines, so they're able to help out. And I think the prescribed burn and deployment of EBAMs is a good example where we can share the responsibility. We were also able to do an equity analysis with our salaries, and we're able to increase so we were competitive with surrounding air districts and continue to invest more and more and more in efficiency measures. And the bottom line with our efforts 5 years ago was it worked. We were able to have balanced budgets and live within our means over that entire time period. And here we are today, casting the net out another 5 years. So the next two slides, I go over what are our challenges today. We still have fiscal instability. Oil and gas activity is changing. We have calculated over the next 5 years, based on the plug and abandonment and decommissioning of platforms, we have roughly $800,000 that is known to be reduced from our revenue stream. And we also, looking at our permits and the fees associated with our permit program, we know that we have not increased fees since 1991. The district has never before hired a consultant to do an analysis on our cost recovery and how much it cost us to carry out our permit program. And so we hired Matrix Consulting. They're a firm who works with air districts up and down the state, so they came with knowledge and experience of how districts operate. So we were able to work with them. We took a look at 3 years of data. It took a lot of rolling up our sleeves and diving into the time and material cost of districts to carry out our stationary source permit program. And the findings were a long ways from what we thought we were. We're at 47% cost recovery. So basically with that conclusion, what it costs to get a permit is subsidized by other funding sources. And when our revenue is dropping, it makes everything even more difficult to ensure we're able to continue living with our means and carry out our core responsibilities. And our salaries and benefits, even though we reduced staff down to 34, our costs continue to increase. Another challenge is associated with our workload. Our workload continues to increase. Wildfire smoke is a big one. Prescribed fire is another large one that takes a lot of our time. We have our community air protection with all of our BARC work, all of our increase in emission inventory. Some of those come with funding sources. A lot of them don't come with enough funding sources to actually cover the cost of those programs. So that's a challenge, unfunded mandates. Staff retention, and this obviously is not unique to the Air District, but I think when you have 34 staff in total, you feel it a lot more. We approximately have 11% of our workforce that leaves every year. And it takes a lot of time working with scientists and engineers. The onboarding process takes a while to get everyone up to speed and working at that same level of capacity. And it's easier, I think, when you have more people to kind of share the wealth, but when you're lean and mean like we are, you feel it. You feel it pretty significantly. But we all know it costs a lot to live here, and we know that the Air District on our own, we're not going to solve that one. But my goal basically is to figure out how we can attract high-quality staff, but more importantly, how can I keep them? I really want to be able to develop a system, a place to work where folks want to come and stay as long as we possibly can. The next slide is a snapshot from the Matrix Consulting study. It looked at all of our fee schedules and our current revenue, how much it cost, and then our cost recovery. Some of these categories, like air quality planning, it's not bad at 80%. But the equipment, which has a deficit of over $750,000, that one is significant for us, as is Schedule F, miscellaneous, and that's a lot of our permit reevaluation work. So in total, with all those different categories, we're at a 47% cost recovery. We're basically subsidizing our stationary source program by $2.3 million each year. So with all that, we did a 5-year lookout, and we're committed to doing this every 5 years. It's really been beneficial for us to live within our means, to be proactive and make sure that we're best situating our agency. So on every year on the budget, we have the means to plan and program for that, and we don't have to go into a deficit. So on the expenditure side, I am recommending we maintain 34 staff. If you look in the long-range fiscal strategy, there's this on page 5 of 14. We have this chart that shows the history of staff since 1980 to today. And you can see the significant reduction in staff. In the days of the 90s, when we were permitting all the oil and gas activity, we were up to 130. Well, it says here 100 and less than 120. I guess some must have been extra help for that. Anyway, we've had to live within our means, and the reduction in staff has been significant, but I'm at a point in time now where I feel I can't go any leaner. Staff are struggling And so what it means for leadership in the agency is to really focus on priorities. We all know we have so many hours of the day that we have to work, and we want to create an environment where people are not overwhelmed. But if we were to cut, things would also be reduced. The amount of time it takes to issue a permit, the amount of monitoring that we can conduct, the amount of complaint response and turnaround on that, all will be taking us more time. So that's one of my main assumptions. On the salary, pension costs, services and supplies, and other expenditures, we looked back over the last 5 years, and these are the averages for those 5 years as far as an increase. So they range between a 2% and 4% increase in those main categories. On the revenue side, we are assuming continuing with our annual adjustment of CPI, and on that, because we had such a high CPI just last year, we took a look at the last 10 years to get a more normalized CPI adjustment. And what the assumption there is CPI would be adjusted 2.92%. I already talked about the reduction in oil and gas at roughly 800,000. The good news with that reduction, I think, is we took a significant hit this current fiscal year of 244,000. So going forward for the next 4 years, we'll see a reduction of 135,000 in our budget. All right, this slide is my problem statement. This is our alligator mouth that we've been working, trying to figure out how the heck can we close the alligator mouth? How can we bring the green line up to the blue line? So just next year, if we do nothing, we're anticipating roughly a $400,000 shortfall. As you move out to 27, 28, that grows to a $1.2 million shortfall. So the next two slides are, maybe it's 3 slides, yeah, next 3 slides are the recommendations that we have outlined that will bring us to a balanced budget over the next 5 years. All of these would require, or not all of these, as I walk through, I'll let you know which require additional board action. And the last slide is also the recommendations and when I envision those specific board actions coming back to you for your consideration. The first one is to maintain our annual CPI. And that's based on an April to April calculation. It does not require any board action. This actually was approved by your board back in '96, so I'm proposing no change to that. Working with Matrix, they're actually recommending a cost recovery policy for our fee-based programs. This is something that a lot of other air districts that they work with have adopted. 85% was their realistic recommendation. They said, well, why don't you go for 100? They're seeing it difficult to go overall for 100%. And at 47% today, 85 is going to be difficult to get to. So let's work first to get to 85, and then once we get there, we can reevaluate if we want to go further. The Health and Safety Code limits the amount of fee increases we can impose each year to 15%. So by maintaining the CPI, I'm recommending that we consider a 10% increase over the next 10 years. And this fee cost recovery process would be incorporated into our Rule 210, and it would be workshopped and through the CAC and through your board at 2 meetings. And I'll talk more about that at the next slide. If we go at 10%, 10% per year, it will take us 10 years to get there, but at the end of this 5-year, I believe we'll be close to 66% cost recovery within 5 years. All right, the third change is changes to Rule 210. Rule 210 was one of our first rules. It was back in the 70s. We based it off of LA City Smog Agency. It's pretty archaic. It's pretty confusing for staff, confusing for the sources to understand. We've been working for the last 1.5 years trying to restructure this rule to make it easier for everyone to understand. There's also categories that are missing. There's things that we're doing now that we did not envision back in the 70s that we would be doing. Cannabis is one example of an area that we didn't envision in the past. So what we're proposing to do, in addition to the cost recovery schedule, we would also discuss different changes to the rule. This would mean a public workshop, it would need a CAC meeting, and then 2 separate board meetings. My goal is to have this before your board for the 2 meetings, and I know my staff hate me when I say this, but ideally I'd like to get this in January and March. It may slip to March and May. It's all dependent on the stakeholder engagement and how that process works and when it's going to come to you. The biggest challenge is I hope to have this come to you for your consideration so we can incorporate it into the 24-25 budget. We need to continue to reduce our operating costs. We're working now with General Services on our Santa Barbara office. They need more space at the Casa Nueva building, so we're trying to restructure that so we can put the bodies that are working out of that office all within that limited space, and that'll have a significant savings. And eventually we will have our Santa Maria office. We're just not there yet. Once we get there, we will obviously be saving rent at that facility. And efficiency measures, we always are looking to implement more and more efficiency measures, but as we all know, they take time, they take money, and we just got to keep pushing forward on the efficiency front. And then the last 2 strategies, adopt a fund balance policy. Director Perotti asks about this policy every budget year for the last 2 years. We don't have a formal fund balance policy today. We have a strategic reserve that the board established a while back, and that's at the 15% level. We could keep it there or we could increase it to 20%. So that's something for consideration as well. And as far as staff retention measures, that's definitely important for me to try to determine how I can try to entice staff to stay around as long as they possibly will consider. This is something that would need to be negotiated. It would have to be approved by your board as far as negotiating parameters, worked with the 2 unions and then brought back. That wouldn't occur until 2025. That's when the contract is due to come back to you. And in summary, this includes all of the recommendations that would require additional board action. A cost recovery policy that would be phased in over the 10 years, proceed with changes to our fee rule, Rule 210, reduce our operating costs. That would be an MOU that would come back from the county, and that would likely happen either at the December or January timeframe. A fund balance policy, and then proceed with negotiations with our unions for the 2025 contracts. And that concludes our presentation, and we are definitely open for feedback and direction from your board.
Thank you, Erin. I just want to kick off the comments and questions by thanking you. I know you spoke with me, and I imagine you made the rounds to really go through this presentation and also just all the considerations and all the thoroughness of the work. So thanks for that. So any questions and comments? I imagine there are. Director Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Capps. Great presentation. Thank you, and thank you for your fiscal responsibility. It's unfortunate we don't see Andy Caldwell here to celebrate this actual reduction in an agency. It's nice to actually see that in the fiscal responsibility that's been shown by staff here, and the ongoing commitment to that. First comment was about the percentage of turnover. I know that that's always hard, especially in a small organization, when you lose that 3 or 4 people when you have only 34. It feels like a lot, but what I understand from HR professionals is that it's the 8 to 12% range is a normal attrition rate. So I know it can be really impactful when you have a small organization, but that is still within a healthy range. And we're not, and believe it or not, we're not trying to chase zero. Turnover is sometimes a good thing. So I'll just put that out there, just because I know that's part of the discussion, and I know it's it can sometimes become personal when it's so close to you.
Yeah.
And so I want to acknowledge that. Moving forward towards the fee schedule in the future, I want us to be very careful that we're really listening to our CAC and our industry groups. I think there's probably an appetite out there for those fees to go up, especially since they've been fairly stable for quite some time. But I think we need to be careful not to potentially put undue financial burden on some of our permit holders, for one thing, as well as, when fees are too high, sometimes people won't report or won't be engaged. So it's a balancing act that we need to do as an organization. As we look at a 10% increase, does that have to be per fee, the 10%, or are we able to move it around? Do we have some flexibility and be able to do that 10% as an aggregate?
We're trying to do as per fee schedule. as an aggregate.
Okay, so that might give us some flexibility for some things to maybe not go up at all and some things go up a little bit more within that schedule. So I just wanted to give that as feedback as a strategy for some of the different operators, that things that don't make sense. You know, sometimes the cost to regulate a source is going to never pencil out for us to actually have that source in existence. You know, we might be able to we might regulate certain businesses out of operation if they have to pay exorbitant fees. So I just think we need to be very sensitive to that. I'll reach out to my CAC and representatives and make sure that they're having an ear to that concern moving forward. But I know that you guys will as well with that. So those are my comments.
Yeah, and just as far as industry, I know there's other questions. We will be notifying everyone that holds a permit when we have our public workshop. So that will be something hopefully will generate their interest and level of participation.
Director Hartman down here.
Yeah, I was astounded that our fees haven't gone up since 1991. It seems to me that our regulated community has been getting a bargain. And so I'm not, I mean, I think the 15% per year for 5 years is something I don't want to take off the table.
The limitation then would be if the board wanted to go at 15%, you also would not be able to do a CPI adjustment. So you'd be foregoing the CPI adjustment and only going with the percent increase. That's something you can consider, but I don't necessarily want to eliminate, once we reach the targeted cost effectiveness level, I don't want to eliminate the opportunity to continue with the CPI adjustment.
And why would the 15% over 5 years for close that option?
The health and safety code limits the total amount that the air districts can impose on our sources at 15% per max per year.
It seems the solution to that is to have a 12% cap. That would get accomplished what we're looking at, so that we can keep that CPI there, but we might be able to maximize the increases. I think that satisfies what Director Hartman's looking for. So, you know, and if it's done with a scalpel, I'm supportive of that. I just want to make sure.
Okay.
Support down here. Dr. Lavanino.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the main thing of how we do this is how we're messaging it, because the way you brought it, when I first heard about this, and I was a little skeptical, I was a little worried. I mean, the folks that used to pay the bills, for better or worse, depending on how people look at things, aren't here anymore to pay the bills. So I think we have to be strategic. I love the way you've kind of laid it out. When you brought it to me, you know, the fact that we haven't raised fees in 30 years, this is what happens when you try to raise your pay and you haven't taken a pay increase in 20 years. It looks terrible, but you got to make up for all that other time. So I think the important things to continue to hit on is the fact that the agency is downsized 75%. You've done everything you possibly can do, moving the operations to Santa Maria. All the easy stuff that I would ask you to do before you raise fees has been done. So I'm okay with this. I mean, I will reach out to my CAC member as well, but I think staying on the path that you're on is going to get us to a good spot. But I would caution, I mean, all of us want to just, I think we have to be careful about just maxing out, because we are talking about a smaller pool of people now. And like Bob said, you know, at some point you tax somebody out of a position, it just means a smaller pool to pull from.
Other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I just want to agree with Bob on this about a 12%, you know, and kind of parrot what he said, because if we max it out at 15, that's what the law allows, and then you're dead locked in there. So I think a 12 would be sufficient.
Yeah, Director Hartman.
I think that's a brilliant suggestion, and I support that.
Excellent. And I just wanted to also compliment
It's not brilliant.
I just wanted to comment as well on just your process and the lead time that and it doesn't feel like you're springing this on us, and and the plan is just very thorough and with enough time to do the work that's required. So I'm in support.
Thank you.
This.
Well, just the experience of this, the county of Santa Barbara.
Okay, sorry about that. So I think, I don't think we have any public comment, but it's important for the clerk to make that known.
Despite them saying we're all invested. Once we mandated our own criminal services.
I think Dawson.
These city hands. And,
Great. And this is a receive and file item, and no vote is necessary. So we will move on to our last two agenda items, which are announcements. And I have one that this is broadcast on SBTV on October 22nd. And with that, we move to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Until it says 1 o'clock, December 21st. I know that was questioned. Has that been set?
That is set currently, yeah. We can't reschedule that until like SBCAG did, because LAFCO also meets that day. So following this meeting, we will do a quorum check to ensure we have a quorum for that meeting.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it, everybody. Have a good one.
You made it.